glad you all could join us here for this event. We have a very honored guest here, Ernie Gibson. My name is Sam Matrani. I am a professor of history at this college, but my job in this particular event is going to be to facilitate. So without further ado, I will let our distinguished guest introduce himself and get us started.
Good afternoon. Yes, I'm Ernie Gibson. I guess I'm just ingrained into this college. This is perhaps the best thing that has ever happened, more or less, to DuPage County. This is the jewel. I like to think of it as the jewel of DuPage County, if not the greater Chicagoland area. I started at the College of DuPage in 1966 as a consultant with the Arthur D. Little company out of Los Angeles. We were working, I was an administrator at Joliet Junior College at that time, and my boss, Dwayne Kirchhoff, the first vice president for business here at the College of DuPage, and I were invited to work with the Arthur D. Little study because we were to be hired in 1967 permanently. And from there, I started here at the College of DuPage. Now, before I get into my relationships with Dr. King, I perhaps would like to say that there were a lot of turbulence in Alabama and Mississippi. I was very a part of it. Arkansas, I was a part of it. But I started here at the College of DuPage in 1967, and we were all over the county. We didn't have this permanent campus here. We were just renting everything, anything that was available, we were renting it and having classes. I think we started with about 2,700 students. Okay. Then we started as a college from the standpoint of forming with our students, working with our students and forming of clubs. Now, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat as such, but students on this campus, out of the turbulence of the South, the greater South, the students of this campus, all white students, said to me, as an administrator, not even an instructor at that time, we would like for you to be our sponsor. So that evening I went home at dinner and I said to my wife, guess what? She said, what? I said, a group of white kids at my college in the Republican DuPage County asked me to be their sponsor and such. Well, that was basically my gateway and welcome to the College of DuPage. We were a very small group at that time. We worked very hard as to what we have basically here today. I will get into a lot of the college situations as we go along. Hopefully, the things that we're saying here, we're talking about and discussing here, I hope perhaps that you would ask questions. That certainly energizes more or less and helps me more or less to remember. I guess we're supposed to refer ourselves to a person that I refer to as the prophet. That is Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Martin and I are about the same age. So if you can do your math and what have you, I was born in 1928. Martin was born in 1929. And we used to tease each other from the standpoint of our ages and what have you. We were the same generation. Martin, I met Martin as a young faculty member at Tuskegee University, Tuskegee, Alabama. At Tuskegee, Alabama, we had more or less a big problem in that community. We were a highly literate Afro-American community. That is, we had the university, we had the 5th largest VA hospital there, we had the famed Tuskegee Air Force Base. We were very, very proud in that community. We were a very sound, literate community, economic-wise, whatever-wise, and what have you. But we were second-class and third-class and fourth-class citizens. And having an educational institution such as Tuskegee University, we thought perhaps we should do something about it. Our dean of students, Dr. Charles G. Gamillion, formed the Tuskegee Civic Association. The Tuskegee Civic Association was based on our gaining our civil rights in not only in Tuskegee, but in all of Macon County, if not Alabama. We were going to show basically the world what we basically could do. As a young faculty member, I was secretary to that Tuskegee Civic Association, working with Dr. Gamillion. We had a white, and naturally in Alabama, a white senator from that area. He didn't like the fact that we were threatened to boycott, because economically, if we could close all of the banks, we could close all of the stores, in which we did eventually. And he didn't like that. So in the state legislature, he introduced and certainly passed legislation gerrymandering us out of the county. We didn't like that. We took it to court, the Tuskegee Civic Association. We took it to all of the courts, all the way up to the Supreme Court, and we won. Well, we had a young preacher, Ph.D. out of Boston, coming to nearby Montgomery, Alabama, 40 miles away, to take over the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. And he heard about Tuskegee. And he wanted to find out just what was going on in Tuskegee. Because Dr. King, this young PhD, wanted to find out just his basic needs. He had some basic needs in Montgomery. Montgomery, just 40 miles away from Tuskegee. I met Dr. King and Abernathy, his fellow colleague. They would attend our meetings and participate in our meetings and participate in our workshops for what they were trying to do or what they were doing, and they said that. They let us, they wanted to do something in Montgomery, and they formed the Montgomery Improvement Association. And lo and behold, you had a young lady who was sitting on a bus and decided not that she didn't want to get up and give a white person her seat. Her name was Rosa Parks. And that was basically the catalyst for the boycott, following the Tuskegee boycott in Montgomery of the bus situations. And that lasted for about 381 days. Chrysler, General Motors, Ford, all supported us in Tuskegee. They gave us 20 station wagons that you refer to today as sports utilities. They gave us 20 station wagons so that we could help basically blacks get to work, because they were walking in whatever way they could get, more or less, that type of thing. And that Tuskegee, the Civic Association, we were going to go down with 20 station wagons right down the main highway. Well, the state police found out and they said, no, turn around. You can't do that. So we had to steal away in the night and get, more or less, get the transportation to Montgomery, which we did, that type of thing. That was our first, basically, episode. We won that. They gained more or less situations there. And then Martin went on to Albany, Georgia, in various situations. And he was doing a lot of writings and things. His house was bombed in more or less in Montgomery, and he got tired of what he was doing there. And I said, well, you're tired. He said, no, my work is through here. We have much more to accomplish. And we went on. He went on to Atlanta, his hometown, and joined his father at Ebenezer Baptist Church. And he formed the SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And as you know, that conference prevails even today. And there he started working. Well, again, I went on off to graduate school at Michigan State University. I heard that Martin was going to be in Detroit. And Martin and I are both of the same fraternity, that is college fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. Some of you may be familiar with it. That was a fraternity that was formed at Cornell University back in 1906 because of the fact that we weren't able to join white situations there. The Thurgood Marshalls and Martin Luther King and all of the very stalwart blacks are basically members of that fraternity. Well, at Michigan State, I worked with the students there. I was a graduate assistant, and I worked with the fraternity. We joined Martin, and we heard that he was speaking in Detroit, so we joined him. And certainly we had a chance to meet again and to refresh ourselves and what have you. Well, word got out, and the president of Michigan State University said to me that he called me in, and I didn't even know as a graduate assistant, I was just there. Right. I didn't even know the president or whatever. I didn't even know his name or whatever. He called me in and said, hey, I heard that you had took a group of students to Detroit to talk with Martin Luther King. I said, oh, yes. You know Dr. King? I said, yes. Can we get him here? I said, well, yeah, I'll try. And so we did. We got him, he stayed there for a week and a half, and had for workshops and things of this nature. So we had that situation. Well, he went on, and I went on to work and things and that type of thing. I left Tuskegee, and I went on to out at the University of Arkansas. And then I had a chance. While at Tuskegee, there was a black millionaire, was a trustee from Birmingham of Tuskegee. And while matriculating at Tuskegee, I worked in the guest house. So that meant that I had a chance to serve the board of trustees and what have you. And we developed a very good relationship. He always wanted me to come to Birmingham and to go into some of his ventures, and particularly his motel. And I was just a waiter at the guest house, but he wanted me to come down and manage motel. Well, I did want that. I told him, what I'd like to do, I'd like to buy you a motel, but I don't have the monies and stuff like that. Well, he made it available where I could, purchase the motel along with my father. Well, we won't get into that way. But anyhow, I opened the motel, and lo and behold, here comes Martin Luther King with all of his entourage. And he wanted to rent the whole motel, 200 and some rooms, and what have you. And I said, well, Martin, what are you doing here? He says, well, we're coming to Birmingham because this is the most segregated city in this country, and we're going to turn this city upside down. And the Lord sent you here because you're here, Gip, and I'm so glad you're here, and what have you. And we started there. Well, my motel was bombed. 3 people were killed. Martin marched from there. From there, we formed the Selma March. Some of you have heard of that. And then 2, we went on to do the March on Washington, basically from my motel. And we had everybody coming to my motel, more or less from the standpoint of meeting with Dr. King, to include Bob Kennedy, the Attorney General, just all notables, movie stars, whatever.
It was the headquarters.
Oh, it was headquarters. It was basically, and we had a situation where we would have press conferences every evening right in the courtyard, and what have you. All of my phones and what have you were tied up, and we made more money on tying up phones for a press from around the world, so to speak, and things of this nature. And we worked very hard and what have you. Now, I had to move out of my home because my home was threatened to be bombed. Martin Luther King Jr., as you know, he was a great author, orator. He's a very good speaker, and as what have you. But then you had his brother, and his brother, to me, was a better speaker. And in fact, even Martin will say that. Well, he was in the area, and he was in Birmingham, Bessemer, and his home, the same night that my motel was bombed, his house was bombed, and whatever. So he left, and he is A.D. King, and very fine preacher, also the same as. So that was more or less from the standpoint of Birmingham. Well, I kept in touch with the office in Atlanta, and well, more or less from the standpoint of having Martin to come to speaking situations. But I accepted a position after my motel was bombed. My wife said, "Okay, everybody out of the pool. We're out of here." And so I accepted a position at Miles College as assistant to the president. And it's a small black college. Some of you may have heard of it. Willie Mae's hometown is in the suburbs of Birmingham. And well, naturally, I was not at all happy there. But I had a friend, and who was a colleague of mine at Tuskegee, and who said to me that there was a position open at Joliet Junior College, and he wanted me to apply for it. Of course, I had accepted a deanship at this college in North Carolina. I had to cancel that, and because the job in Joliet was much better, and so what have you. And I ended up in Joliet, and my boss, no, I'm back now to College of DuPage. My boss and I came here from Joliet, what have you. Now, however, let me give you something on Joliet. Bishop Romeo Blanchett, some of you may remember him. He was the bishop of the Joliet Diocese of the Catholic Church, and it includes DuPage also. We were very good friends because we were on the Human Relations Committee for the mayor of Joliet. And we had a ministerial kind of alliance there in Joliet, in the greater area. Well, Romeo was basically the head of it, so to speak. So he said, can you get Martin to come to Joliet? And so I said, yeah, we'll work on it. So about a month, the office called me and said that Martin was meeting. He had a meeting in Philadelphia. He was going to meet with, he was coming to meet with the mayor of Chicago at that time.
Richard J. Daley.
Yeah, not the young dude. I'm talking the old man.
The old guy. Yep.
Anyhow, and he would have some time, and he would come down and speak to us. And we had him at the open field there in Joliet. And he said to me that, he said, Gip, I came here. When they told me that you wanted me to come to Joliet, I thought you were working at the prison, or you were in prison. And I said, wait. In leaving, he said, but what I want you to do, I want you to arrange with the people at the prison, and I want to come here and bring my staff, and we wanted to work with the prisoners here for 2 or 3 days. We're not going to create no ruckus, but we're just going to be here among the brothers, so whatever. I said, okay. I said, well, they got white people there too. Okay. He said, I said, the brothers. He said, you know, a brother is a brother to me. I don't care what color he is. I said, well, okay, I forgot. I'm sorry. That was the fall before he was assassinated. Now, I talked with him a week before he was assassinated on some things that in the Bahamas. My mother and father from the Bahamas. And he wanted to do some things on Long Island in the Bahamas, which is about 60 miles northeast of Cuba. It's called Long Island because it's the longest of the island. Well, there is a resort there, Selma March, and he wanted to have a situation where he would get people from Haiti and from Jamaica and from the Bahamas and in a situation, because here again, you know, he was the Nobel Peace Prize, and he wanted to mobilize and theorize more or less basically the world and bring about nonviolence and brotherhood and love and respect and for everybody. And we talked. And I wanted you to know too that I am a cradle Episcopalian. That is, I was born into the Episcopal Church. As you know, well, you don't know, my parents are from the islands, from the Bahama Islands, and the British owned that. So that was the Church of England, and so, and I used to tease Martin, and he used to tease me about the fact that, you know, I'm gonna bring you out of that Episcopal Church and make you a Baptist boy, and what have you. Well, what I want you to know is this: that a week before he died, on that Sunday, he gave a major address, a speech, preach, to at the National Episcopal Cathedral in Washington, D.C. And why I mention that is because my oldest child is married to Wiley Branton Jr., who is naturally the son of Wiley Branton Sr., who was funeralized there. And he was by far, Sr. was the attorney for the Little Rock Nine in Little Rock. And that was, and it was quite enlightening to me to have, for Martin, that was one of his last sermons at a church, for the Episcopal Church. So when the Lord takes me, we'll have something to talk about when I get up there, but what have you. I remain a friend to the family as today. And I'm still with the kids and talking with them and what have you. Maybe I need to quit, and maybe we need to get somebody to start.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
My students will know this. I show a picture of your motel actually in class.
Oh, okay.
And the way that I was taught about this, it was before I was born, I have to admit, but was that after the bombing of your motel was the first of the urban rebellions in Birmingham, that people who hadn't necessarily participated in the marches and all the children's marches, I'm sure you guys have seen the pictures of people being sprayed by the fire hoses and the dogs, and ultimately that Mayor Bull Connor was defeated. This is a huge turning point for the movement in Birmingham. Mm-hmm. And so we are really honored to have someone who played such a central role in this huge turning point. Right? But the way that I was taught it is that after that, there was one of the first riots, first urban rebellions. And I wonder what Dr. King's reaction was to that, if you...
That was not the first riot. You're right there. It was not the first. I'm glad you mentioned this too. You know, they were in the park, and you see, in Birmingham, we had a tough time in getting more or less the things we wanted and to get things going and what have you. And the boycott was was working and wasn't working. We weren't making we weren't getting the type of success we wanted out of this situation. Bull Connor was just well, I won't say what I want to say, but he would, we just couldn't do much basically there. But we hired when I say we hired, basically the movement, we hired a young couple out of Nashville, Mr. and Mrs. Bevel, because they were successful in Nashville, Tennessee, with kids. And we hired them to come into Birmingham, and they mobilized all of the kids. And that's the time that I thought perhaps I may have been killed or whatever. Whatever. And they formed all of the kids in all of the grade schools and high schools. And that turned more or less our situation around. Now, when you say that, it mindful is this. Chris McNair and his wife and I, we were classmates at Tuskegee. Why I bring in Chris McNair? Because of Chris McNair, while I was in Birmingham, he was a young entrepreneur. His wife was a principal. We were all graduates, and we were from Tuskegee, and we were all socialized in the Alumni Association. Well, the McNairs, there were 4 little girls that was killed in the 16th Street Baptist Church. That's right around the corner from my motel. Denise McNair was a very good friend, and in the Girl Scouts was my oldest child. When 16th Street Baptist Church was bombed, this is after what your question is. One Sunday morning, my daughter, my oldest child, came in and said, "Dad, can you operate the Sunday school at church, at the Episcopal church there? I want to go to 16th Street Baptist Church." And I said, "Well, why?" She said, "Because it's Children's Day, and Denise is performing, and I want to see her." I said, "Okay, good." And it's right around the corner from my motel. Okay? Well, and so we were at breakfast, and she said, "Okay." Now, we were in the motel, because now my home was threatened to be bombed. And so I moved my full family I just took 2 or 3 rooms and made suites out of them, and moved my whole family. Because I said, if something happens, we just all die together rather than, having them out in the city. And so Carolyn and I, and my wife, Carolyn, was sitting there and finishing breakfast. And Stephanie was on her way to 16th Street Baptist Church. It was only a couple of blocks. And we heard the sirens. And somebody came into the motel. And basically, we were in the coffee shop of the motel. And they said, the 16th Street Baptist Church was bombed. Okay. Well, they took my wife to the hospital. And I struggled to get out and what have you. And then I met my daughter running back, what have you, and crying, what have you. But the thing is, she was getting ready to step off the sidewalks across the street to get into the church when the bomb went off.
Wow.
And I don't know how she lives with that even today. But she's a fine gal, a fine woman, and doing real well.
Do you want to ask a couple questions from the audience if people have things they want to ask? I have lots of questions of my own, but we can open it up.
Now, this might be something you might not be able to answer, but I feel like I should ask because you knew him personally. Now, shortly before Dr. King died, he made a speech talking about the war beyond Vietnam. And then that sort of galvanized the hate towards Dr. King in relation to the Vietnam War. Now, do you believe when he started speaking out against the Vietnam War, maybe the government sort of looked at him as more of a target? And do you think the government played a role in his murder?
No, not basically. I would say from from the presidential situation. I wouldn't say. I would say the FBI. Yes. Edgar, who was it? Hoover.
J. Edgar Hoover.
J. Edgar Hoover. He hated his guts, and he worked very hard against Dr. King, and all of his, not all of his, because I worked with some of the FBI people in Montgomery, and in Alabama, and in Birmingham. Not all of them, whatever. But there was a very distaste for him in that situation. Now, the thing is, in fact, I reported to, I can say this because my boss is dead now, and he was a dear friend of mine. In fact, he died in my arms. He was the first vice president here at the College of DuPage, Dwayne Kirchhoff. Dwayne Kirchhoff said to me he said, you know, I like Dr. King, but Dr. King is interfering now with this war in Vietnam. And I said, Dwayne, and we sat down and we talked for a whole, an afternoon on that, whatever. We were like that. We could disagree, but not be disagreeable, so to speak. But now, yes, there were a lot of. Am I answering your question? And there were a lot of. They didn't think that he should interfere with whatever. But here's a man that was built on nonviolence, and it's and particularly, he would come to Birmingham, and I have a daughter. Whenever she was about just about 10 months or 9 months or something like that, a year old, whatever. That's the first thing he wanted to do. He loved children. He was into youth, so to speak. But I hope that answers your question.
I have to say one quick thing while we're waiting for the next question. This is an important point to make as a historian, which you brought up, which is people like to talk about the government, and I think it's important to understand the government has lots of people, and they don't all necessarily always agree. I'm just using your point to make a quick historical point for students, because I think certainly, like, did Lyndon Johnson want to see Dr. King killed? I think the answer is almost definitely he didn't. He disagreed with him about Vietnam, but I don't think Lyndon Johnson ordered Dr. King's assassination or anything like that. But were there people in the government who didn't like him in the FBI? And you can see this today, to understand what's going on today. Clearly the government is not one united thing, right? The FBI and Donald Trump don't really like each other very much.
Well, let me piggyback on that. In West Texas, there are only rednecks and rattlesnakes. And Lyndon Johnson was from West Texas. Lyndon Johnson did more. He disagreed with Martin. And in fact, he had to give up his presidency because of Vietnam. And yes, but the point is this, that we accomplished more civil rights-wise. JFK, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, the one who we assassinated, shot, we killed him just like a stray dog down on the streets of Texas, in Dallas, Texas. And I said to my wife then, we got trouble, and we have some trouble in this country now, if we can do that. But JFK, he couldn't get, although Bobby could have, had he lived. But JFK couldn't, because I don't think JFK was really convinced, totally, per se. But Lyndon Johnson, coming from the Deep South, and you know about his background, he said to a senator from Arkansas, I'm bringing this black bill up tomorrow, and it's coming up, and I want you to vote for it, because if you don't vote for it, I'm gonna run over you. He was, it's LBJ, twisting your arms and things of this nature. He could get things done, and he did, and what have you. Now, was the government responsible for Dr. King? I can't answer that. I can't say that.
Hi, good afternoon. So it's well documented that the government and then people stood in the way of the civil rights movement. The FBI sent death threats to people who were part of it, and obviously you had your share of obstacles with threats of bombings, moving your family. Was there any direct point where you thought that you might kind of like give up because you were too worried about the safety of you and your family? And if so, what was it that made you continue to fight for civil rights instead of trying to just separate yourself from it for your safety?
I have two fine daughters who is my heart and soul, and that starts with my wife, my family. And that's more or less my motivation. I played football and basketball in college. I was very combative. But being around Dr. King, I learned a spirit of love and to more or less to forgive. For example, one night in the motel in Birmingham, we found out that there was a Judas among the preachers. They're getting together for their itinerary or their agenda, what they were going to do the next day, the next week, and whatever. Some way, somehow, that was getting out. That information was getting out. Well, after all of the movements, they would meet late at night in a back conference room that I had in the motel. That is in the restaurant, in the back of the main dining room area. And I was the one who would serve the 8 or 10 or 12 or 15 in that area because they didn't want things to get out, whatever. So I said, okay, the only way I can do that, they said, well, we want your trusted employee. I said, no, the way I can do that, I will do that. I will serve them and whatever. And I would do that. And I would serve them, and then I would do my bookwork and whatever. One night, every night they would leave, they would get around in a circle and they would sing, "We Shall Overcome." Well, naturally, I didn't participate because they were the ministers and whatever. But this night, Martin said, hey, get up in there. Get in this circle. And I said, okay. And so I'm standing next to him. I think this will answer your question more so. And we were going around, and as we go around, everybody has to say something, whatever. I remember you don't know what to say, things like that. Like we had I was at my grandmother's house, and we had to say something, right? And a passage from the Bible, and my grandmother said, "Jesus wept," and I said, "He sure did." So, but anyhow, so I was wondering about what am I going to say, and I'm standing right next to Martin. And Martin said to us that there's a Judas in here, and we know who you are. And I'd like for you to step out. Well, nobody, stepping out, so to speak. And he said, because we have a mission here, and we are going to win, and we are going to uphold humanity, and if you're not ready to die, and then I didn't know I had hair on my back or whatever. If you don't, and that resonated with me, if you're not ready to die for this movement, for all mankind, get out of here. And we had that one preacher he did get out. And I think that sustained me. And I remember that even today. No, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to protest, what have you. Things of this nature. But I do know this, and you can take this to the bank. I am colorblind. I am. And that was basically cemented here at College of DuPage the years I've been here. The way my wife and I and my children were accepted. My youngest child grew up on this campus. And as I was saying yesterday, she's now an attorney, and she is the general counsel for all of North America, to include Canada and Mexico, for a transportation company out of London. But being around Dr. King, you couldn't be afraid. That is, if you believed in what he was doing, and you had to believe because he believed. I was saying this the other day to someone, I think yesterday, that every time, I don't care where I am in this country or whatever, I see a garbage person, that's the most respected person that I know. I just want to come up, I don't know who it is, I like to go up and hug him, or her, or whatever, because there are some women picking up garbage too now, things of this nature, whatever. So.
Hi, I'm asking you to speculate here, but I'm wondering if Dr. King were still alive, what social issues he would be most involved in or concerned about.
I think that Martin would have issues the same as my person. Basically, with, the greatest instrument that we have had in this country is our public education. There's a big threat to that today. We like I say, we have developed killing fields from the grade schools, high schools, college, or what have you. I think he would be concerned, as I am, most concerned about our young people and our educational system. We talk about the Japanese and all of these European people, and they're coming over to our schools and into our universities and participating, and we say how smart they are and what have you. But they send their cream of their crops there. But the concerns he would have, basically, I'm sure, is basically with the youth, and two, from a standpoint of, as a black person now, we have the privilege, or we have the right to walk into a motel, and we can go into communities and we could buy a home. We've cleared up, we've accomplished quite a bit. We've accomplished quite a bit. But the only thing is that if you go into a motel, they would like for you to pay for it. If you're buying a home, they would like for you to have a down payment. So when it comes to employment, that would be a great concern among minorities in this country as to how they stack up. Women, the way women are treated in reference to wages, what have you, they bring us into the world, men, they spanked our butts, they clean our behinds, they teach us how to walk, they teach us how to talk, they send us to school, and that type of thing. Then we become CEOs, and then we look down, we don't even want to, we don't respect them as we should. That's me coming out now. But I think Dr. King would share that with me. No, I don't think that he would find knowing and having respect for all mankind and for grace, love, and peace. No, I don't think he would ever be satisfied with that. Why? Because of human behavior. Human behavior will never let us allow us to have any kind of positive continuance favorably. I hope that answers your question.
Well, can I interject with a question? So was there ever a time where you and Dr. King argued about something, where you disagreed with him about something? I'm curious how that might have gone. Or where you think that your perspective was slightly different.
Yeah, we had a problem with nonviolence. As I said before, yeah, as young, I was rather combative. And in the beginning, I was telling him about, he shouldn't do this and shouldn't do that. And he said to me that, I can't, I can't. If I have to be this and to be that and that type of thing. We had problems, and he tried to tone me down quite a bit, and he did, because in Montgomery there was a policeman, and this policeman just kicked me into the guts, and I was marching with Dr. King. This was doing the bus boycott, and I kicked him back. And King and some other people, Dr. King and some other, pulled me off of him. And so Dr. King said, "Now you don't march no more. We don't want you marching, because these white folk gonna kill you. You can't turn the other cheek," and that type of thing. But I did learn to turn the other cheek, as I am today. I learned to do that. We argued about nonviolence. We argued about a lot of things. Well, I don't know if you've heard of the letters from the Birmingham jail. Whenever I'm working in the yard, I like to wear jumpsuits and whatever, cut the grass and carry on. And Martin, whenever he'd go to jail and he'd come out and he'd get these nice suits and he just looked So I said to him, Martin, from now on, I want you to just wear a pair of trousers and a shirt, no tie, because he's always dressed, And I want you to put on his jumpsuits, this jumpsuit of mine. So he said, that's. I said, because you look awful when you come back, And so he said, okay. And of course, Abernathy was always with him, and he got a little jealous, but he was too fat, anyhow. So I couldn't get him. But we argued about a lot of things, and the thing is, I feel privileged because he relied. You've heard of Y.T. Walker and Andy Young and all of these people. These were his top people, top lieutenants and whatever, generals, so to speak, and that type of thing. Well, we always had we go back to Tuskegee. So we and a lot of his lieutenants and things of this nature. Now, I used to have a lot of arguments with them because they didn't like it the way he used to treat how close up we were and how he relied on me, things of this nature.
I'm going to change the tone a little bit.
Okay.
A lot of us have grown up with the stories. I'm sitting here thinking about how you opened this when you said, you prefaced the story by saying, Dr. Dr. King turned to me and said, "Gip, it's going to be a while before many of us know someone who can be called Gip and calls Reverend Abernathy fat. This is an interesting perspective." So we've grown up with the stories about Dr. King. Tell me what made him smile. What when you two gathered around the table and you got through a hard day of rabble rousing, or what brought a smile to both your faces during those times? What'd you do to just relax?
Well, we couldn't tell dirty jokes, so because he was a preacher, what have you. That's a good question. I don't know how to answer that, because if I look back on it, times that I used to see that Martin would smile would be basically when he would greet friends, like Roy Wilkins of the NAACP, the Urban League people, fellow theologians. He was always smiling and what have you. He smiled in church when, particularly, he was very fond of, just before he was assassinated, he was talking to the band person from Chicago, I can't think of his name now, and was telling him that song he wanted him to sing. And I used to, he would smile then, but you're right, you got something there. He was always very serious, and very serious. He referred to me as Gip all the time. I referred to him as Martin, and I didn't tell him to call me Gip, because a lot of people call me Ernie, Gip, and a lot of people call me some other things too. I won't say, but I can tell you one thing. He and my wife used to be. They were very fond of each other. They had lengthy conversations. So I used to pick him up at because he's flying in every day and out, and all the kind of, he's in and out of Birmingham and in and out of Montgomery, but in Birmingham. And I would pick him up. One day I was busy at the motel doing something, and I asked Carolyn to pick him up. She took him by the barber shop and told him he needs a haircut, and what have you. And he came back, and they were in the dining room there. He told me from then, now you normally pick me up, but I don't want you to pick me up no more. I want Carolyn to pick me up. Because she took me by and got me a haircut. I said, well, did you pay for it? And I knew because he didn't ever have any money. At Michigan State, I think they gave him something like, $25,000 or $30,000 for the time that he was there. And he told him, well, check with Gip here. He knows the office, sent it down there, but not that. He didn't ever have any money. Didn't want any money. Didn't expect to pay for anything. You just walk in and that type of thing. Money wasn't a problem, basically, with him. But I'll tell you a story about, however. So Carolyn would pick him up all the time. Well, he was always followed by the local police and the FBI. And the local police thought right away that the lady that was picking him up was Coretta Scott King. So Carolyn picked him up one night, and I was at the motel, and she was going to go on home. She picked him up, dropped him off, and she went on home. She pulled up, and then the police car pulled up behind her and arrested her. And, and he got on the phone and said, we got a good one we caught here tonight. Yeah, we know. We got the the king bitch here tonight. And the guy says, well, what do you mean by the king bitch? We got the wife. He said, we're going to lock her up. Of course, my daughter was at the house at the time, the oldest child. And she called me right away. I called my lawyer. By the time they got down to the jail, we were there and what have you. But we had to wait for about an hour because they rode around and picking up people and they talking and things like this and what have you. And I just think about a lot of those things about my wife and my daughter, not my youngest daughter, because she was too young, the one that's, I was telling you about the attorney. But I just don't know how they, remember all that. I mean, how they go along with that. I just don't know how I could take it myself.
So I think we're running out of time here, so we have to wrap up. But I want to give Mr. Gibson a real round of applause for coming in here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I want to say this to all of you here, that when I spoke of the fact that the College of DuPage is a jewel, or what have you, there, in all of my professional life, I worked at Tuskegee, I worked at the University of Arkansas, I taught at Michigan State University as a graduate assistant, and I taught here, although I was an administrator, I was also in the classroom here, and at Governor State. But there's nothing in all my professional life that has been as profound as my work here at College of DuPage. And that's why I'm here this afternoon. I love the soul of this college. And I hope that you, those of you, will develop that. This is a jewel. This is a fine institution. We came here and we hired the best man, Dr. Rodney Berg, out of Seattle, Washington, as our first president. He built this institution, followed by the Hal McInerney's, and so on. And then to more or less the angel that I refer to as Dr. Rondo. She's a lovely person. And I hope that all of you will give her as much in the way of support as she can get. We've always had a very strong, more or less, support from the community here. It has been a great, positive educational thought in this community. We have in DuPage County some of the finest high schools, some of the finest public school systems in the world. And that's why this institution is what it is. You see, in building a cake or baking a cake, my grandmother always said you got to use the best ingredients. I used to ask her, why your pound cake tastes? She said, because I use the best ingredients. This college is using the best ingredients. And it's not more or less from the standpoint of college. All of you here, as students, you are the college. So don't take it lightly. Okay?